So the last major thing that we need to do on this app is to display all of the lap times at the bottom, in the bottom half of our app here. In the last section, we were able to save the current value of the lap as var lap, which was equal to the time elapsed, which would have been the value of the timer at that current time. So all we need to do now is somehow save this lap value, and then we could go ahead and render it at some future point in time. So again, as you might guess, we're going to save this lap time on state. But this time, things are going to be just a little bit different, because instead of just saving a distinct time, we really want to save an array of time. So we're going to add another property to our initial state, and it's going to be an array this time. Just an empty array. We'll go back down to handle lap press, and what we want to do now is whenever the user taps handle lap press, we want to save that lap time and then update that array, this.state.laps, with the new time. We're going to do this by using the concat method on laps, which remember is an array. So we'll concat on a new array with one value, just lap. You might be wondering why we're using concat instead of, say, pushing the new value of lap on here. And the answer to that is going back to the golden rule behind state. We never want to modify our state directly, right? We never want to say something like this.state.laps equals lap or something like that. Well, if we were to call this.state.laps.push and then the new lap, that's really doing the same thing as changing the state directly, right? We're modifying the value of state directly. We're not using set state. So whenever we want to update our lap object here, or the array of laps, we instead of modifying the existing array, we're going to return a new array, which is what happens when we concat two arrays together. It returns a completely new array. Okay, so that sounds good. Now the last thing we need to do is render all of the laps that we have on this.state.laps. And we're going to do that by making a list just like we did in the last chapter. So inside of our render function here, we currently have some placeholder text for I am a list of laps. Let's go ahead and replace that. We'll put it inside of a curly braces, and we'll reference a helper function that we'll build right now called this.laps. So let's add that function right now. Don't forget the comma. And then to build this list, we're going to do it just like we did in the last section initially by using the map method. So we will return this.state.laps.map, and then we're going to add a function here, and we're going to return a view. Now let's just do a quick refresher on how map works. We pass map a function. Map gets called with every instance, or excuse me, every element within the array that's being mapped over. We return some component from it, and then that entire array gets returned back into our render function, which ultimately ends up as a list of items on our page here. So to our function here, we're going to get a single lap time, and then there's actually also a second argument that our function here is going to be called with automatically, and it's the index. It's the index of the array. It's the current item within the array that we're operating on. And we're going to make use of that index by labeling which lap number we're currently on. So let's go ahead and add a text element, and we'll say lap number and then index +1. The +1 is because this is a 0 indexed array, and we don't really want to show lap 0, we want to show lap 1. So the first time through this function, index will be equal to 0, and so 0 + 1, of course, is lap 1. And we'll add one more text here for the actual time, and we'll use our time helper that we included at the top, remember the separate npm package, to format our time for us. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's see if this is working. So we'll refresh, we'll start, and then we'll start taking laps. Fantastic, just what we wanted. So we got laps 1 through 5 right here. And you can see that we get the formatted time on each of them. This is looking good. Let's finish off this app with some styling in the next section.